The Greyhound bus smelled like diesel and disappointment. Warren Castellan sat in the back row, his calloused hands folded on top of a faded canvas duffel bag that had seen better decades. 67 years old, 42 years at Boeing, 3 months since he'd buried his wife, and now he was running, though he wouldn't have called it that if you'd asked him. Running implied you knew where you were going. The Iowa countryside rolled past the window in endless variations of the same thing. Cornfields, farmhouses, grain elevators rising like concrete tombstones against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Warren didn't look. He kept his eyes on his hands instead, studying the scars and calluses that mapped out a lifetime of work. Engine mounts for 747s. Precision welding. Tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. He'd built things that flew at 40,000 feet, carrying hundreds of people who never once thought about the man who'd made sure the engines stayed attached to the wings. That was fine. Warren had never needed recognition. He'd needed the work, the focus, the clean simplicity of a problem that could be solved with the right tool and enough patience. But there were some problems no amount of patience could solve. The bus hit a pothole and Warren's duffel bag shifted. Inside was everything he owned that mattered. 3 changes of clothes, a leather toiletry kit Diane had given him for their 30th anniversary, his discharge papers from the Gulf War folded in a plastic sleeve, a photograph of Clare at age 8 standing in his garage holding a welding torch that was almost as big as she was grinning, like she'd just discovered fire. He hadn't looked at that photograph in 6 years. The bus driver's voice crackled over the intercom. Engine trouble. Unscheduled stop. The town of Milbrook, Iowa. Population 300 and change. Should be about 20 minutes, folks. Stretch your legs if you want. Warren felt the bus lurch as the driver downshifted. The engine made a sound he recognized immediately. Fuel injector misfiring, probably clogged. They'd need more than 20 minutes to fix it properly, but bus companies never did anything properly. They did things quickly and cheaply and hoped the problem would wait until the next guy's shift. The bus rolled to a stop on a street that looked like every dying small town Warren had ever seen. Main Street, USA, except half the storefronts were boarded up and the other half had handwritten signs in the windows that said things like everything must go and closed Sundays and Mondays, which really meant closed most days because there wasn't enough business to justify opening. Warren stood. His knees protested. 67 wasn't old, not really, but it wasn't young either, and 42 years of standing on concrete factory floors had left their mark. He grabbed his duffel bag and stepped off the bus into the June heat. The air smelled like diesel and fresh-cut grass and something else underneath, the particular smell of a place that was slowly returning to the earth. Not decay exactly, more like entropy, the inevitable unwinding of human ambition in the face of economic gravity. Warren looked down the street, a grain elevator at the far end still operational but surrounded by empty parking lots, a church on the corner with a for sale sign, a diner with a faded awning that read Graces in letters that had once been red but were now the color of old brick, and across the street from the diner, a small red brick building with tall, narrow windows and a weathered green door. The building had the look of something official, federal, the kind of architecture that said, "We're the government and we're here to help," in that post-Depression, pre-Vietnam way when people still believed that might be true. A stone lintel above the door had carved letters, most of them illegible from weather, but Warren could make out enough to read U.S. Post Office. The building was abandoned. That was obvious. The windows were boarded, weeds grew through cracks in the front steps. A rusted flagpole stood beside the door. No flag, the halyard clinking against the pole in the breeze with a sound like a clock ticking down. Warren stared at it for a long time. He was still staring when he heard footsteps behind him. "You look like a man who's thinking hard about something." Warren turned. A woman stood there, maybe late 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and a face that had seen enough of life to have earned the smile lines around her eyes. She wore a diner uniform, the kind with the name embroidered on the chest. Grace. "Just looking," Warren said. "At the old post office. Can't say there's much to see. Been closed since 1987. Postal Service consolidated everything down to Mount Pleasant. Building's been sitting empty ever since." Warren looked back at the building. Long time for a building to sit empty. GSA tried to sell it a bunch of times. Nobody wants it. Last I heard they were down to $1 just to get it off the books. Grace tilted her head. "You waiting for the bus?" Was. Well, you'll be waiting a while. That injector's going to take an hour at least, maybe two if Carl's working on it. Carl's the mechanic at the mobile station. Good man, but not what you'd call fast. She nodded toward the diner. Come on, I'll get you some coffee. On the house. Warren looked at his duffel bag, looked at the bus already surrounded by a small crowd of passengers smoking cigarettes and complaining into their phones. Looked at the post office building with its boarded windows and its rusted flagpole and its door the color of old money. Coffee sounds good, he said. Grace's diner was exactly what Warren expected. Vinyl booths, laminate tables, a counter with chrome stools, a pie case with 3 pies in it, each one looking like it had been made that morning. The air smelled like coffee and bacon grease and something baking in the back. Grace poured him coffee without asking if he wanted cream or sugar. Just set the mug down in front of him, black hot enough to see the steam. You ex-military? She asked, nodding at his cap. Army, Gulf War, 1990 to 1991. Yeah, thought so. My late husband was Air Force. He had the same look. What look is that? The look of a man who knows how to sit still and wait. She refilled her own mug, even though it was already full, and sat down across from him uninvited. So what brings you to Milbrook? We don't get many visitors anymore. Not unless they're lost. Warren wrapped his hands around the mug. The heat felt good. Bus broke down. I heard, but that's not what I asked. Warren looked at her. Grace looked back. She had the kind of eyes that had seen enough grief to recognize it in other people. My wife died 3 months ago, Warren said. Cancer. I sold the house in Seattle. Didn't have anywhere else to be. Grace nodded like this was a perfectly reasonable explanation for being on a bus to nowhere. Kids. A daughter. She know you're out here wandering. Warren didn't answer her. Grace sipped her coffee. The post office building. You want to know more about it? Why would I want to know about an abandoned post office? Because you stared at it for 10 minutes before you came in here. And because I've been running this diner for 30 years, and I know the look of a man who's trying to decide if he's got one more fight left in him. She leaned back. My cousin Evelyn works at the county office, handles property records. The building's listed as surplus federal property. Been available for $1 since 2010 to anyone willing to take over the tax obligation and bring it up to code within 18 months. 18 months. That's the catch. If you can't get it certified safe in 18 months, it reverts back to the county and they start over. Nobody's managed it yet. Last person who tried gave up after 6 months when she found out how much the foundation work would cost. How much? She said 14,000, but I don't know if that was accurate. She wasn't exactly a contractor. Warren looked out the window at the post office. $14,000. That was less than what he'd spent on Diane's funeral. Less than what was sitting in his bank account from the house sale. Less, if he was being honest, than what he'd spent on the engine rebuild for his '68 Mustang that was now sitting in a storage unit in Seattle because he hadn't been able to bring himself to sell it. What's the tax obligation, he asked. Grace smiled. About $400 a year. Evelyn could tell you exactly. Warren drank his coffee. It was good coffee, better than he'd expected. He thought about the $52,000 in his checking account. The duffel bag with everything he owned. The fact that he had nowhere to go and no one waiting for him, and that the bus, when it finally got fixed, was just taking him further east into more of the same nothing. He thought about Clare, 28 years old, 6 years since they'd spoken. She'd be in Omaha now, probably. That's where she'd been the last time Diane had mentioned her back, when Diane was still trying to get them to reconcile. Claire working at some garage doing the thing Warren had told her was throwing her life away. He thought about the photograph in his duffel bag, Claire at 8 grinning holding that welding torch. He thought about Diane in the hospital bed 3 days before she died. Her hand in his, her voice barely a whisper. You need to call her, Warren. You need to fix this before it's too late. He'd promised he would. He'd lied. Where's the county office? Warren asked. Grace's smile got wider. 3 blocks down corner of Oak and Main. You want me to call Evelyn, let her know you're coming. Yeah, if you don't mind. By the time Warren walked the 3 blocks, Evelyn was already pulling up the file on her computer. She was younger than Grace, maybe mid-40s, with the kind of practical bob haircut that said she didn't have time for nonsense, and a patient way of explaining things that made Warren think she'd probably been explaining things to confuse people for most of her career. Grace said you're interested in the post office building, Evelyn said, gesturing for Warren to sit. Interested might be a strong word. Well, let me tell you what you'd be getting interested in. She turned her monitor so he could see. The building is listed as surplus federal property. Title transferred to the county in 2009 after years of failed auctions. Since 2010, it's been available for a nominal fee of $1 to anyone willing to take over the tax obligation and bring the structure up to code within 18 months. Grace mentioned the 18 months. That's the important part. If you can't get it certified safe in 18 months, it reverts back to the county and we start over. The building's been empty since 1987. That's 37 years. The structure's sound mostly, but it needs work. Foundation has some settling on the north side. Roof needs attention. Electrical's got to be brought up to current code. Plumbing needs to be run new from the street. She looked at him over her reading glasses. It's not a small project. I worked at Boeing for 42 years. I know about big projects. Evelyn studied him for a moment. Then she pulled out a form. All right, I need to tell you that I've processed 3 of these applications in the last 10 years. None of them made it past the deadline. The building's still sitting there. So whatever you're thinking, make sure you're thinking it through. Warren looked at the form. It was 1 page, simple. Name, address, signature acknowledging the terms. Can I ask you a question? Warren said. Sure. Why's the county doing this? What's in it for you? Evelyn leaned back in her chair. Honestly, we just want someone to care about it. That building was the center of this town for almost a century. People came there to mail letters to their sons in the war, to send packages to grandchildren, to pick up their Social Security checks. It meant something. And now it's just sitting there rotting, and every year we have to explain to the state why we're still carrying it on the books. She shrugged. $1 seems like a small price for someone who will actually trauma him. Warren picked up the pen. He signed the form. Evelyn watched him sign. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a large brass key attached to a wooden tag. The tag had careful lettering burned into it, Milbrook P.O. She slid the key across the desk. Good luck, Mr. Castellan, she said. I mean that. Warren stood on the cracked sidewalk in front of the post office and looked up at it. The building seemed smaller now that he was about to go inside. A single-story red brick box, maybe 30 feet wide and 50 feet long. The windows were boarded with plywood that had weathered to the color of driftwood. The green door was peeling. The carved stone lintel above the door said U.S. Post Office, but half the letters were illegible. The brass key was heavy in his hand. It had the weight of something that had been used every day for decades and then not used at all for decades more. Warren put the key in the lock. The lock was stiff. He had to work at applying pressure, releasing, trying again. Then something gave, and the lock turned with a sound like bones cracking. He pushed the door open. The smell hit him first. Old paper, old wood, dust, and something else underneath. Something that took him back to Kuwait in 1991. Government buildings, the smell of bureaucracy, rubber stamps and mimeograph ink and carbon paper and floor wax. All of it faint now, almost gone, but still there if you knew what you were breathing for. The chemical ghost of what the building had been. Warren stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The lobby was dark. The boarded windows let in almost no light. But there was enough. Enough to see the row of brass post office boxes that lined the left wall, their glass windows still intact, each one with a tiny brass number plate. Some of the boxes still had mail inside. Letters and magazines from 1987 never claimed still waiting. The service counter ran the length of the right wall, a polished wooden counter with an ornate brass grill rising from it, the kind of craftsmanship you didn't see anymore. Behind the grill were sorting shelves and cubbyholes for outgoing mail. On the wall behind the counter hung a framed portrait of Ronald Reagan, slightly crooked, his faded photograph smiling out at a lobby that had been empty for 37 years. The floor was tile, a pattern of small octagons in black and white, dulled by time but still beautiful. The ceiling was pressed tin painted white with a single brass light fixture hanging in the center. A small wooden table stood against one wall. A pencil lay on the table as if someone had just set it down and walked away. Warren stood in the middle of the lobby and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace exactly, more like purpose. He walked slowly through the lobby, his footsteps echoing, past the service counter, through a small swinging gate in the brass grill. Into the back room. The back room had been the working heart of the post office. Sorting tables, some still covered, with pigeonhole shelves full of old paperwork. An ancient adding machine on a metal desk. A rack of pegs on the wall where mail carriers had once hung their jackets. And at the far end of the back room, set into the wall, a heavy steel door. The vault. Warren walked toward it slowly. The vault was exactly what he'd expected. A squat steel door, maybe 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, painted dark green with gold lettering that read U.S. Government, Property, and Postal Inspector. A round combination dial in the center. The handle was brass, darkened with age. A small engraved plate beside the door read, Federal Postal Vault, keep secure. Warren tried the handle. It turned. The door wasn't locked. He stood there for a moment, staring at the unlocked vault handle, and thought about Kuwait, about the supply bunkers they'd secured during the war, about the standing order to keep everything locked always because an unlocked door was an invitation to chaos. But this door had been unlocked for 37 years. Someone had left it that way on purpose. Warren pulled the handle, and the vault door swung open on its heavy hinges with a low metallic groan that sounded like the building itself waking up. Inside was a small, steel-lined chamber, maybe 4 feet deep and 4 feet wide, with shelves along both walls and in the back. The shelves were made of steel, and they were not empty. On the right side were stacks of leather-bound ledgers, government property labeled by year, going back to the 1940s. Postal records, registered mail logs, money order records, daily cash reports, every day's business for almost 50 years, neatly recorded in the handwriting of whoever had been on duty. On the left side were strong boxes, small steel boxes with carrying handles, the kind used to store valuables and cash. Each one had a small padlock, 3 boxes total. And on the back shelf between the ledgers and the strong boxes were 3 canvas mail sacks. The old-fashioned kind, with leather drawstrings and brass tags stamped USPS Property. The sacks were full, bulging. Warren reached for one of the sacks. It was heavier than he'd expected. He carried it out to the back room and set it on a sorting table and opened the drawstring. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, old letters stamped and addressed, some with return addresses and some without. He picked up one at random and looked at it. The postmark was from 1983. The envelope was yellowed but intact. The letter had never been delivered. He picked up another. 1979. Another, 1985. All undelivered, all from the era before the post office closed. Warren opened the second mail sack. More letters. The third. More letters still. He stood there staring at the 3 sacks, trying to understand what he was looking at. And then slowly he began to put it together. Undeliverable mail. Letters with wrong addresses. Letters to people who had moved away. Letters that, for one reason or another, couldn't be returned to sender. In the era before computerized tracking, rural post offices sometimes kept this mail themselves, hoping the rightful owners would eventually show up. When a post office closed, the sacks were supposed to be forwarded to the regional office. Sometimes they weren't. These 3 sacks had been sitting in the vault in Milbrook, Iowa since 1987. 37 years of letters waiting to be delivered to people who no longer lived anywhere near here. Warren turned to the strong boxes. He carried one out to the sorting table. The padlock was rusted shut. He looked around for something to break it with, found a hammer in an old desk drawer. 3 sharp hits and the padlock came off. He lifted the lid. Inside was money. Not paper money. Money orders. Stacks of postal money orders, each one filled out, each one for a specific amount to a specific recipient. None of them had been cashed. They were from 1983, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987. Someone had bought these money orders, paid for them in cash, and then for reasons Warren couldn't immediately understand, never mailed them. Or mailed them and they'd come back undeliverable and ended up here in the vault. He opened the second strongbox. More money orders and cash. Stacks of old bills bundled with paper bands. The third strongbox held cash and a few small items. Watches, rings, a silver compact. Things that had probably arrived in the mail with undeliverable addresses and had been kept in the vault for safekeeping. Warren sat down on the cold tile floor of the back room and looked at what he had found. The undeliverable letters alone might not be worth anything in a material sense, though some of them might contain checks or cash or items of value, but all of them contain something more important: stories, connections, attempts at reaching across distance. The money orders, if they could be cashed, were clearly valuable. Though Warren had no idea whether 37-year-old money orders were still valid. The cash in the strongbox was real. He counted it roughly. Over $16,000 in old bills. On top of the stack of leather ledgers on the right side shelf was a small envelope, hand-addressed in a careful fountain pen script. The envelope said, "To whoever finds this, please open." Warren stood, walked to the vault, picked up the envelope. His hands were shaking slightly. He didn't know why. He opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written on the same careful stationery, in the same careful hand. "My name is Margaret Ellis. I was the postmaster of Milbrook, Iowa from 1964 until the office closed in June 1987. I am writing this on my last day on the job. The Postal Service is closing us down next week and transferring everything to Mount Pleasant. I have been going through the vault in preparation for the transfer, and I find myself unable to send these particular items on. The letters in the canvas sacks are undeliverable mail that I have been holding for years, in some cases decades, in the hope that the rightful recipients would one day come to claim them. Most of them will never be claimed. The recipients have moved away or died or were misaddressed to people who never existed at all. Sending them to a dead letter office in some distant city feels like a betrayal. These letters were meant for our community. They should stay here." The money orders are a different story. Many of them are from people in Milbrook who mailed them to children or grandchildren for birthdays or Christmas or graduations. And the letters came back undeliverable because the intended recipients had moved without leaving a forwarding address. I kept them in hopes that someone would eventually ask. No one ever did. After 20 years of waiting, I concluded that the rightful owners were either dead or no longer cared. The cash in the small items came from various sources. Money tucked into holiday cards from grandparents whose cards couldn't be delivered. A wristwatch sent as a gift by a man to his son. A silver compact meant for an estranged sister. Things that had no return address or that had been sent from places the Postal Service could no longer reach. I have been safekeeping all of these for decades, partly because it was my job, and partly because the thought of sending them to a government warehouse where they would be lost felt like finalizing a grief I was not ready to finalize. I am leaving everything here because I do not have the strength to destroy it or the authority to distribute it. If you are reading this letter, you have somehow come to own this building, and by extension, you now possess these unclaimed mails. Do with them what you think is right. Try to find the recipients if you can. Many of them probably cannot be found. Those that cannot, well, keep the contents for yourself. You have earned them by being the person who cared enough to walk into this vault in the first place. Milbrook was a good town once. It is a dying town now. Whatever you do with this building, please remember that it was a place where people came to send their love to each other, and sometimes their love got lost on the way. Try to do right by the lost love if you can. Sincerely, Margaret Ellis. June 30th, 1987. Warren read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and held it against his chest and sat on the cold tile floor of the post office back room with the 3 sacks of undelivered letters and the 3 strong boxes of money orders and cash. And for the first time since Diane had died, Warren Castellan started to cry. Not the quiet tears he'd shed at the funeral while Clare stood 30 feet away, refusing to look at him. Not the single tear that had run down his face when he'd signed the papers to sell the house. This was different. This was the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep, the kind that shook his shoulders and made his breath come in gasps. The kind that happened when a man who'd spent 67 years building walls around his grief finally found a crack wide enough to let some of it out. He cried for Diane, for the 38 years they'd had together and the 38 more they should have had, for the way she'd looked at him in the hospital, her hand in his, asking him to fix things with Clare, for the promise he'd made and broken. He cried for Clare, for the little girl who'd held the welding torch and grinned, for the young woman who'd told him she wanted to be a mechanic, not an engineer, and he'd told her she was throwing her life away, for the daughter who'd stood at her mother's funeral and wouldn't speak to him because he'd been too proud to say he was wrong. He cried for Margaret Ellis, whoever she was, a woman who'd spent 23 years running a post office in a dying town and couldn't bring herself to send these letters away because they were all that remained of people trying to reach each other across distance. He cried for himself, for 42 years of doing the right thing the wrong way, for being the kind of man who could build an engine mount that would hold steady at 40,000 feet, but couldn't hold his own family together. And when the crying finally stopped, when his breath came steady again, and his eyes were dry, and his chest ached from the force of it, Warren Castellan stood up. He looked at the 3 mail sacks. He looked at the 3 strong boxes. He looked at Margaret Ellis's letter still in his hand. Do with them what you think is right. Warren had spent his entire adult life doing what he thought was right, following the rules, working hard, providing for his family, building things that mattered. And he'd been wrong about almost all of it, but maybe, just maybe, he could get this one thing right. He picked up one of the undelivered letters, looked at the address, the postmark from 1984, the name written in careful cursive on the front. Mrs. Dorothy Brennan, 412 Oak Street, Milbrook, Y, 85253. Warren walked back out to the lobby, stood in the fading afternoon light that came through the cracks in the boarded windows, looked at Ronald Reagan's faded photograph on the wall, still smiling after 37 years. All right, Warren said to the empty room. Let's see if we can find Dorothy Brennan. He didn't sleep in the post office that first night. He took the most important items from the vault, the ledgers, the strong boxes. Margaret's letter and one of the mail sacks, locked them inside the building, and walked back to Grace's diner. Grace listened to the story while Warren ate a grilled cheese sandwich he hadn't asked for, but that appeared in front of him anyway. When he finished talking, Grace sat back and looked at him for a long moment. You bought the building. For $1. And you found all that in the vault. Yeah. And you're going to try to deliver 37-year-old letters. That's the idea. Grace nodded slowly. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, she hung up and looked at Warren. My sister-in-law runs a bed and breakfast on the edge of town. She's got a room available. I told her you'd be there for at least a week, maybe longer. She's giving you half price while you figure things out. Warren started to reach for his wallet. Grace waved him off. Pay her directly. And Warren? Yeah, that thing Margaret Ellis wrote, about doing right by the lost love. What about it? Grace stood up and started clearing his plate. Just make sure you remember that some of the lost love is a lot closer than 37 years away. Warren knew what she meant. He didn't answer. That night in the small room at the bed and breakfast, Warren unpacked his duffel bag. He took out the photograph of Clare at age 8 and set it on the nightstand. Then he took out the first letter he'd pulled from the mail sack. Mrs. Dorothy Brennan, 412 Oak Street, Milbrook, Iowa, postmark 1984. He turned on the lamp and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was another envelope, smaller, thicker, and a brief handwritten note. Dorothy, this came back to us marked undeliverable, and we don't know why. The address is right. Maybe you moved. Anyway, we wanted you to have it. Hope you and Frank are doing well. Love, Susan. The smaller envelope inside was from Mutual Life Insurance Company. It was addressed to Dorothy Brennan, and it contained a check for $3,400. The check was dated November 15, 1984. Warren sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the check. 37 years old, almost certainly expired, but the money had been owed to Dorothy Brennan, whoever she was, and apparently she'd never gotten it. He opened the laptop he'd brought from Seattle, connected to the bed and breakfast Wi-Fi, typed Dorothy Brennan, Milbrook, Iowa into Google. The first result was an obituary. Dorothy Ann Brennan, 87, of Des Moines, Iowa, passed away peacefully on March 14, 2019. Born in Milbrook, Iowa in 1932, Dorothy spent most of her life as a school teacher and devoted mother. She was preceded in death by her husband Frank in 1998. She is survived by her son Michael Brennan of Des Moines and 2 grandchildren. Warren read the obituary 3 times. Dorothy was dead, had been for 5 years, but she had a son, Michael Brennan, Des Moines. Warren opened a new search, found a phone number for a Michael Brennan in Des Moines. There were 4 listings. He wrote them all down. Then he closed the laptop and turned off the light and lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he would start making calls. Tomorrow he would try to do right by the lost love. Tonight he just needed to sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. It never did anymore. Instead, Warren lay there and thought about Margaret Ellis locking those letters in the vault on her last day. Thought about her walking out of the post office for the final time, knowing that somewhere in that vault was $3,400 that belonged to a woman who would probably never get it. Thought about all the other letters in those sacks, all the other attempts at connection that had failed, all the love that had gotten lost on the way. And he thought about Claire, 28 years old, somewhere in Omaha, maybe thinking about him. Probably not. Probably better that way. Warren closed his eyes. Do with them what you think is right. In the morning, Warren called the first Michael Brennan on his list. Wrong person. The second number was disconnected. The third was a business. The fourth number rang 6 times before someone picked up. Hello. Male voice, middle-aged, cautious. Is this Michael Brennan, son of Dorothy Brennan? A pause. Who's asking? My name is Warren Castellan. I'm calling from Milbrook, Iowa. I found something that belonged to your mother. Something from a long time ago. I think you should have it. Another pause. Longer this time. What kind of something? A letter and a check. From 1984. A check from 1984. That's 40 years ago. It's not going to be any good. I know, but it was meant for your mother, and I thought you should know about it. Silence on the other end of the line. Then what was the check for $3,400 from Mutual Life Insurance? Warren heard something that might have been a sharp intake of breath. Mr. Brennan, how did you find this? It's a long story. Can I ask you something? I guess. Did your mother ever mention waiting for an insurance payment that never came? Another long silence. Then Michael Brennan's voice came back quieter. My whole childhood. She talked about it my whole childhood. There was some kind of policy my dad had taken out. When he got sick in '84, she was supposed to get a payout. $3,000, something like that. She said it never came. She called the company over and over. They said they'd sent it. She never got it. Warren looked at the letter in his hand, the outer envelope addressed to Dorothy at 412 Oak Street, Milbrook. Mr. Brennan, did your mother live at 412 Oak Street in 1984? No, we lived at 421 Oak, 421, not 412. There it was. Someone had transposed 2 numbers. The check had gone to a house that didn't exist, had come back to the post office, had ended up in Margaret Ellis's vault. And Dorothy Brennan had spent the rest of her life thinking the insurance company had cheated her. Mr. Brennan, Warren said, I'd like to bring this to you in person. Are you in Des Moines? Yeah, but you don't have to come all the way here. The check's not good anymore anyway. I know, but I think you should see it, and I think there might be something we can do. Like what? Like calling the insurance company and explaining what happened. Michael Brennan laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Mr. Castellan, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but my mother died in 2019. The insurance company isn't going to pay out on a 40-year-old clerical error for someone who's been dead for 5 years. Maybe not, but you won't know unless we try. Silence again. Then, why do you care? Warren looked at the photograph of Clare on the nightstand, 8 years old, holding the welding torch, grinning. Because I've spent most of my life not doing the things I should have done when I should have done them, and I'm trying to do better. Michael Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, when can you come? Warren drove to Des Moines that afternoon, 2 hours each way. He brought the letter, the check, and a copy of the obituary he'd printed at the county office. Michael Brennan lived in a small house on the east side of the city. He answered the door, looking exactly like Warren had pictured him. Late 50s, tired eyes, the look of a man who'd worked hard his whole life and had just enough to show for it. They sat at his kitchen table. Warren handed him the envelope. Michael opened it slowly. Read Susan's note, pulled out the insurance check, stared at it for a long time. $3,400, he said quietly. In 1984, that would have been everything. We were struggling. Dad was sick. Mom was working 2 jobs. This would have changed everything. I'm sorry it took 40 years to get here. Michael looked up at Warren. Where did you find this? Warren told him. The bus breaking down, the post office, the vault, Margaret Ellis's letter, all of it. When he finished, Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, my mother struggled her whole life, even after Dad died, even after I was grown. She never could get ahead. She died in a nursing home with about $800 in her bank account. Warren didn't say anything. Michael looked at the check again. You really think the insurance company will honor this? I think we should ask. They called Mutual Life together from Michael's kitchen. It took 4 transfers and 40 minutes of hold music. But eventually they got someone in claims who listened to the story, took down the information, said she'd have to research it and call back. She called back 2 days later. The company agreed to honor the check as a gesture of goodwill, $3,400, plus 40 years of interest calculated at the policy rate. Total payout $11,200, made out to the estate of Dorothy Ann Brennan. Michael Brennan called Warren when he got the check. He was crying. "I can't believe this. I can't believe you did this. I didn't do anything. I just delivered the mail." "You did more than that. You gave me something back. I don't know how to explain it. It's not about the money. It's about knowing that she wasn't wrong, that the check really did exist, that she wasn't crazy for believing it should have come." Warren understood. Sometimes what people needed wasn't the thing itself. It was the proof that they hadn't been wrong to hope for it. "Mr. Castellan," Michael said, "I want to give you something for what you did." "That's not necessary." "I know it's not necessary, but I want to. $1,000 for the building, for whatever you're doing with those letters." Warren started to refuse. Then he thought about the foundation work, the roof, the electrical, the 18-month deadline. "All right," he said, "thank you." "No," Michael said, "thank you." After he hung up, Warren sat in his room at the bed and breakfast and looked at the remaining letters in the mail sack. 299 left. He'd delivered one, so it had taken 3 days. At this rate, it would take him 2.5 years to deliver them all. But he had only 18 months to save the building. He couldn't do both things alone. Warren picked up the next letter. Mrs. Eleanor Price, Cedar Rapids, postmarked 1984. Inside was a birthday card from a mother to her daughter. He found Eleanor Price's number, called her, read her the card over the phone. She cried for 10 minutes. Then she said, "Can I come get it in person?" "Of course." Eleanor Price drove to Milbrook that weekend. She was 74 years old. She held the card like it was made of glass. "I never got to say goodbye to her," Eleanor said. "She died suddenly. Heart attack. This card, it's like she's talking to me again." Warren gave her the card and watched her walk back to her car holding it against her chest. That was delivery number 2. The foundation crack ran along the north wall of the post office like a scar. Warren stood in the basement, flashlight in hand, studying the way the concrete had settled over 37 years. Not catastrophic, but not good either. The kind of thing that would fail inspection if left unaddressed. He'd been in Milbrook for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of mornings sorting letters, afternoons tracking addresses, evenings researching. He'd delivered 4 letters total, 4 out of 300. The building needed work, real work, and Warren had 15 months left. His phone buzzed, a text from Grace. "Contractor coming by at 10. Name's Dalton McKenzie, ex-military. Does good work." Warren checked his watch, 9:45. He was making coffee when he heard boots on the front porch. Warren opened the door. The man standing there was maybe late 40s, built like someone who'd spent his life doing physical work. Dark hair going gray. Weathered face. He wore work boots, jeans, and a Marines t-shirt. His eyes went to Warren's cap. Army. Gulf War. "You're Castellan," the man said. "That's right." "Dalton McKenzie. Grace said you needed a contractor." They shook hands. The grip of men who understood some things didn't need to be said. "Marines," Warren asked. 91, Kuwait City. "Army. Same time, different sector." Something shifted in Mackenzie's eyes. Recognition. "Show me what needs doing," Mackenzie said. Warren showed him everything. The foundation, the roof, the electrical, the plumbing. Mackenzie took notes. Asked questions. "You got a deadline. 15 months. County wants it certified or they take it back." "Tight. Can it be done?" Mackenzie looked around the lobby. His eyes lingered on the brass boxes, the tile floor. "Yeah," he said. "Question is whether it should be." "What do you mean?" "This building's been empty 37 years. Town's dying. Whatever you're planning, you need to ask if it'll matter in 5 years." Warren thought about Dorothy Brennan, about Eleanor Price crying on the phone. "It'll matter," Warren said. Mackenzie studied him, then nodded. "Let me work up numbers. Have an estimate tomorrow." "Ballpark?" Mackenzie looked at his notes. "Foundations 9, maybe 10,000. Roofs 7, electricals 11, plumbing's 8,500, plus smaller things, drywall, paint, floors, pest control." He calculated. 38,000 total, if we don't find worse when we open walls. Warren had 46,000 from the vault, plus Michael Brennan's 1,000, 47 total. That works, Mackenzie raised an eyebrow. You got that kind of money. I do. And you're spending it on a building in a dying town. I bought it for $1. 40,000 to save it seems reasonable. Mackenzie almost smiled. You're either smart or dumb. Haven't figured which yet. Makes two of us. Mackenzie did smile then. I'll get you that estimate. Fair warning, I don't cut corners. We do it right or not at all. That's what I'm counting on. They shook hands. Mackenzie turned to leave, then stopped. What are you planning to do with this place once it's fixed? Warren looked at the brass boxes. The service counter. The place where people had come to send love across distance. I'm going to deliver the mail, Warren said. Mackenzie nodded like this made sense. Then he left. The estimate came back the next day. $35,800 itemized to the last screw. Warren told him to start. The work began Monday. Mackenzie showed up at 7 with tools and a work ethic that reminded Warren of Boeing. No wasted motion, just steady progress. Warren worked alongside him, not because Mackenzie needed help, but because Warren needed the work, needed tools in his hands, needed problems that could be solved. They didn't talk much, neither was a talker, but there was rhythm to working together. Hand me that level, hold this steady, check the measurement. It reminded Warren of working with Clare when she was young. He tried not to think about that. On the third day jackhammering foundation, Mackenzie stopped. You got people who know you're out here. Warren shut off his jackhammer. What do you mean? You're 67 spending $40,000 to fix a post office in a town you don't live in. Somebody should know where you are. Grace knows. Evelyn knows. I mean family. Warren picked up his jackhammer. Not really. Mackenzie was quiet. Then I got a daughter, Colorado, we don't talk. My ex poisoned that well after the divorce. Warren looked at him. Mackenzie stared at the concrete. How long? Warren asked. 4 years since we talked. 7 since I saw her. You try reaching out. A few times, she doesn't respond. Warren thought about Clare at the funeral, standing 30 feet away. I've got a daughter too, Warren said. We don't talk either. How long? 6 years. Mackenzie nodded. What happened? I told her she was making a mistake. She told me I was an asshole. We were both right. You try to fix it. Warren thought about Diane in the hospital, the promise he'd made and broken. Not hard enough, he said. They went back to work. The jackhammers were loud enough that conversation was impossible, which was fine. By the end of week 2, they'd poured new foundation. By week 3, the roof was stripped. Mackenzie worked with precision Warren recognized. Measure twice. Cut once. Check your work. In the evenings, Warren continued tracking down recipients. Eleanor Price had been easy, still in Cedar Rapids. Warren had read her the birthday card. She'd cried, driven down to collect it in person. Robert Hammond in Wisconsin was harder. The address was from 1986. Hammond had moved twice. Warren finally tracked him through property records and a helpful DMV clerk. Warren called, explained he had found a letter from Hammond's father written a week before the father died. Hammond went silent for so long, Warren thought the call dropped. Then, my father and I didn't get along. He died before we could fix things. I thought I'd never hear from him again. Warren read the letter. 3 paragraphs. Every word what a son needed to hear from a father. I was hard on you, too hard. I thought I was teaching you to be strong. I was teaching you to be afraid of me. I'm proud of you. I should have said that more. I love you, son, Hammond cried. Warren sat in silence and listened to a 60-year-old man cry over words written 38 years ago. Thank you, Hammond said when he could speak. Thank you for finding this. I'm just delivering mail, Warren said. That was delivery 3. The 4th was a Social Security notification. Ruth Morrison had applied for benefits in 1985, never received the approval. Spent 2 years thinking she'd been denied. She hadn't. The letter just went to the wrong address. Ruth Morrison was dead since 2003. But Warren found her son in Florida, sent him a copy with an explanation. The son called to say his mother had talked about that rejected application her whole life. Always felt the government cheated her. She wasn't crazy, the son said. She was right. The letter existed. Warren understood. Sometimes people just needed proof they hadn't been wrong. 4 letters down, 296 to go. In week 4, everything changed. Warren was running electrical wire when his phone rang. Unknown Iowa number. Hello, Mr. Castellan, Jennifer Wright from NPR Des Moines. I'm a producer and I heard about what you're doing. The post office, the letters. I'd love to talk to you. Warren set down the wire cutters. How did you hear Michael Brennan? His mother's insurance check. He told a friend at the station. It's remarkable. I think our listeners would love it. Warren thought about Margaret's letter. Try to do right by the lost love. I don't know. I'm just delivering mail. That's exactly why people want to hear it. Nobody writes letters anymore. What you're doing reminds people that connection used to mean something. Warren looked around the basement, at the clean work that would make the building safe. If I do this, this isn't about me. It's about the letters, the people who were supposed to get them. Understood. Can I come this weekend? An NPR story meant exposure. Maybe some recipients would hear and come forward. All right, Warren said. This weekend. Jennifer Wright showed up Saturday with recording equipment and deep questions. Not just what, but why, and what does it mean? Warren tried to answer honestly. The bus, the dollar, the vault, Margaret's letter. He told her about the line that hit hardest. Try to do right by the lost love. And have you, Jennifer asked, done right by the lost love? Warren thought about Dorothy Brennan, Eleanor Price, Robert Hammond. I'm trying, he said. The interview lasted 2 hours. Jennifer recorded him walking through the post office, opening the vault, showing the brass boxes and pressed tin ceiling. She asked to see letters. Warren showed 3, a birthday card, a property tax notice, a Sears delivery notice. These are people's lives, Jennifer said quietly. Just waiting. Yeah. How many delivered? 4. Out of 300. Jennifer looked at him. That'll take years. I've got time, Warren said. The NPR segment aired Sunday morning. Warren was working on the roof with Mackenzie when his phone started buzzing. Texts, emails, voicemails, all from people who'd heard. Grace called. Warren, you're famous, Evelyn called. My office has had 12 calls. A voicemail from David Foster. I grew up in Milbrook. My grandmother, Alice Foster, lived there until 1989. I'm wondering if you found anything for her. Warren saved it. By day's end, he had 43 voicemails and over 100 emails. You opened a door, Mackenzie said, loading tools. People are walking through whether you're ready or not. Warren looked at his phone. Notifications kept coming. I need help, he said. Mackenzie nodded. Yeah, you do. Grace organized volunteers. By week's end, Warren had 6 regulars. Grace created a database, every letter logged. Sender, recipient, postmark, return address, status. Evelyn came evenings to track property records and forwarding addresses. Judith Marsh, retired librarian, handled phones and emails, set up in the back room at a thrift store desk. Peter Hoffman, retired postal worker, helped Warren understand envelope codes and markings on these. By month 4, Warren had delivered 47 letters, 47 of 300. Always the same reactions: shock, tears, gratitude. Some drove to Milbrook to see the post office, to stand where their letter had waited. Frank Garrison broke down when Warren gave him a birthday card his dead wife sent their son in 1986. The son never got it. Died in a car crash 1989. Frank held it. She was trying to reach him, still trying. Patricia Reeves wept over a letter from her estranged sister written 1985. The sister died 1992, never reconciled. I thought she hated me, Patricia said. But she wrote this. She was trying. Warren saw the pattern. Most undeliverable mail wasn't about money or information. It was about the attempt. People trying to reach across distance or anger or time, trying to say I love you or I'm sorry. And those messages never arrived. Until now. By month 5, the post office took shape. Foundation solid, roof done, electrical roughed, waiting inspection. Mackenzie started plumbing. One October afternoon, installing copper pipe, Mackenzie said, I called my daughter last week. Warren looked up from soldering. She answered, no, left a message, told her what I'm doing, about you and the letters. Said I was sorry for not being around. She called back, not yet, but I'm trying again. Warren nodded, went back to soldering. After a minute, you ever think about calling your daughter? Warren thought about Clare, the funeral, 30 feet away. Every day, Warren said, but you don't. No. Why shy? Warren set down the iron. Because I don't know what to sing. I was wrong and she was right and I don't know how to fix that. Maybe you don't have to know. Maybe just try. Warren picked up the iron. Maybe. Silence. Then Mackenzie. These letters, they're all from people who tried and failed. Wrong addresses, people moved, they tried to connect and it didn't work. Yeah. But you're finishing what they started, making the connection even though it's 38 years late. Warren saw where this was going. It's not the same. Isn't it you're delivering a message that should have been delivered long ago? What makes a letter different from a phone call? A letter doesn't talk back. Mackenzie almost smiled. Fair, but the principle's the same. Try. Even if you don't know if it'll work, even if it's too long, try anyway. Warren didn't answer, but that night lying in bed, he thought about it. Try anyway. He picked up his phone, found Claire's number, stared at it, set the phone down, not tonight, but maybe soon. In month 6, everything accelerated. The NPR story got picked up nationally. A 15-minute feature on Warren and the post office and lost love waiting to be found. After that, Warren's phone didn't stop for 3 days. Hundreds of emails, then thousands. People asking if letters might be for them. Judith recruited 2 more volunteers just to process inquiries. Grace's database grew. Not just letters Warren had, but people looking, cross-referencing, matching, building connections across decades. By month 6, 82 letters delivered. Month 7, 136. The work took on life. People showed up. Not just recipients, visitors, curious people who'd heard and wanted to see where love had been stored 38 years. Warren wasn't ready. He was a man who worked alone. The attention made him uncomfortable. But Grace convinced him to open the lobby to visitors. People need this, she said. Let them see someone cares. So Warren did. 3 afternoons a week. People came to see brass boxes, pressed tin ceiling, tile floor, Reagan portrait still crooked. They asked questions. Warren answered. They cried sometimes, standing in the lobby, looking at where grandparents mailed letters. Parents picked up packages. It's like a church, one woman said, where people sent prayers. Warren hadn't thought of it that way. But suppose she was right. By month 8, building nearly done. Mackenzie finished plumbing. Electrical passed inspection, walls repaired, painted, floors refinished. Warren converted the back sorting room into an apartment. Bed, small kitchen, bathroom, his. First place he'd owned in 3 months. He moved out of the bed and breakfast into the post office. Living there changed things. Work late sorting, wake dawn researching. Work rhythm became life rhythm. Mackenzie noticed, you're becoming the building. What do you mean? You live here, sleep here, eat here, work here. You and this place are the same, Warren thought. Is that bad? Depends, hiding from something or building something. Warren didn't have an answer. Month 9. Warren opened the letter room, Grace's name for it. Not a post office postal service wouldn't certify, but a letter room where people could learn about undeliverable mail. Search for letters, sit in the lobby, and remember when connection meant envelopes and trust. Opening was small. Volunteers, town people. Evelyn brought cake. Grace brought coffee. Judith brought a calligraphy sign, the Milbrook letter room. Warren felt awkward, but cut the ribbon Evelyn hung and let people walk through. Mackenzie stood beside him on the steps. You did it, Mackenzie said. We did it. No, this was you. I just helped with carpentry. Warren looked at the building, fresh paint and restored windows, new roof. Looked like a post office again. Like something that mattered. My daughter called, Mackenzie said quietly. Warren turned. Yeah, we talked an hour. It was good. What changed? I kept trying, messages every week. Didn't push. Just told her what I'm doing. About this place, you, the letters. How things lost can be found if someone cares to look. Warren felt something twist in his chest. That's good. I'm glad. You should call yours. I know. But you won't. Warren watched people in the lobby, looking at brass boxes, taking pictures. I don't know if she'd answer, he said. Only one way to find out. That night, Warren sat in his apartment and stared at his phone. Claire's number right there. 6 years, 1 call away. He picked up the phone, set it down, picked it up, hands shaking. He thought about letters delivered, People who tried to reach someone and failed. Messages that waited 38 years for a second chance. Margaret's letter. Try to do right by the lost love. Diane. Her hand in his. The promise. He dialed Claire's number. Rang once. Twice. 3 times. Heart pounding. 4. 5. Voicemail. Hi, you've reached Claire. Leave a message. Beep. Warren opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened again. Claire, it's your dad. I know it's been a long time. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm in Iowa. Milbrook. I'm doing something. Trying to do something right for once. And I wanted you to know. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. For not listening. For being too proud to admit I was wrong. For not being there when your mom was dying. I'm sorry. He paused, voice shaking. I love you, Claire. I should have said that 6 years ago. I'm saying it now. Call me if you want. Or don't, but I wanted you to know. He hung up, sat in dark, waited. Phone didn't ring. Warren set it down and walked to the lobby, stood in the empty room with brass boxes and pressed tin and tile. He delivered 136 letters to others, but still didn't know how to deliver the one that mattered most. In month 10, 2 things changed everything. First was James Whitmore. Warren had heard about him from Grace. Developer, owned half the county's commercial real estate, buying Main Street properties in Milbrook for years. Whitmore showed up Tuesday afternoon while Warren organized letters. Mr. Castellan James Whitmore. Warren turned. Whitmore was early 60s, expensive suit, expensive shoes, the kind who measured success in square footage and ROI. They shook hands. I've been following your work, Whitmore said. Impressive. Building looks good. Thank you. I want to make an offer. $75,000 for the property. That's 75,000 times what you paid. Good return on 9 months. Warren looked at him. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale. It's just a matter of price. 80,000. Final offer. I said it's not for sale. Whitmore's smile didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. You're 67. You've got maybe 10 good years left. Take the money. Retire somewhere warm. Let someone else worry about a building in a dying town. I'm already retired. This is what I'm doing. This is nostalgia. This building stopped being relevant in 1987. Town's dying, Main Street's dying. You can't save it by fixing one old post office. Warren thought about the 136 letters delivered. People who cried. Connections rebuilt. I'm not trying to save the town, Warren said. I'm just delivering mail. Whitmore's expression shifted to pity. You have 5 months left on your deadline. That's not a lot. Buildings like this always have surprises. Things not in the estimate. Problems showing up too late. When you fail inspection, I'll still be here. But the offer won't be 80,000. He handed Warren a card. Think about it. After Whitmore left, Warren stood feeling something he hadn't felt since Kuwait. The sense someone was targeting him. An enemy. He called Mackenzie. Whitmore came by. Figured he would. What did he offer? 80,000. You take it? No. Mackenzie was quiet. Good. That building's worth more than money. He said I'd fail inspection, said there'd be surprises. Might be. Old buildings always have something, but we've been thorough. Done the work right. You'll pass. Warren wanted to believe that, but Whitmore's words stuck. 5 months left. The second thing was the letter. Warren was sorting the last undeliverable mail when he found it. An envelope that made him stop breathing. Postmark March 12, 1987. Addressed to Warren Castellan, care of General Delivery, Milbrook, Iowa, 52530. From Leonard Castellan, 1847, Maple Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska 68104. Leonard, Warren's younger brother, dead 30 years, estranged 12 years before that. Warren's hands shook as he opened it. The letter was written on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. Leonard's handwriting. Warren would have recognized it anywhere. The same careful loops their father had taught them both. The same slant to the right. The same way Leonard dotted his I's with small, precise circles instead of dots. Warren sat down on the cold tile floor of the back room and read, March 8, 1987. Warren, 12 years. We haven't spoken in 12 years. I was angry you left for Boeing without helping Dad at the garage. I said you thought you were better than us. I said you'd forgotten where you came from. I was wrong. I'm writing because my heart's bad. Doctor says I have a few years if I'm lucky, probably less. The old man's ticker, they say. Same thing that took Dad. I should have seen it coming. I have a daughter now, Hannah. She's 7, looks like Mom, has your stubbornness in Dad's hands. I'm teaching her engines in the garage behind our house. Same garage where Dad taught us. She's good at it, Warren. Natural. The way you were. If something happens to me, if my wife can't manage alone, would you be there for Hannah? Not to raise her. Just so she knows she's not alone in the world. So she knows she's got family who remembers where she came from. I know I don't deserve to ask after what I said in 75. But she's your blood, your niece. And maybe you could do for her what we couldn't do for each other. Be family, your brother Leonard. And I'm sorry I said those things in 75. You were right to chase your dream. I should have told you that before you left. A photograph slipped out. A 7-year-old girl in a garage holding a wrench almost as big as she was. Dark hair, serious expression, standing next to a workbench covered in tools. Warren stared at the photograph. Leonard had died in 1994. Heart attack. Sudden. Warren had been 37, got the call from Leonard's wife. Had not gone to the funeral. Pride. The same pride that had kept them apart 12 years. The same pride that destroyed his relationship with Clare. Warren had never known about Hannah. Never known Leonard forgave him. Never known this letter existed. The letter was sent to General Delivery, Milbrook. But Warren never lived in Milbrook. Had been stationed in Kansas in 1987. No connection to this town. Except. Warren pulled out his discharge papers, looked at the mail address from his final Army year before Boeing, Fort Riley, Kansas. But he'd given his parents' Omaha address as permanent. His parents were dead by 1987. Leonard must have been trying every address he could think of, including general delivery in small Iowa towns near Omaha. The letter came to Milbrook, was marked undeliverable, ended up in Margaret Ellis's vault, waited 37 years. Warren read the letter again, then a third time. Leonard had wanted him there for Hannah. Hannah, who would be 44 now, if still alive. Warren stood, walked to the lobby, stood in afternoon light. His brother had reached out, tried to rebuild what they'd broken, tried to make sure his daughter wouldn't be alone, and Warren had never known. He pulled out his phone, called Mackenzie. I need you to cover tomorrow, maybe longer. I have to go to Omaha. What's in Omaha? Warren looked at the photograph of 7-year-old Hannah holding the wrench. Family, he said. Warren left at dawn, 6-hour drive to Omaha, 6 hours of interstate and cornfields and small towns dying like Milbrook. He stopped once for gas and coffee, called Evelyn from the truck stop parking lot. I need you to find someone. Hannah Castellan, born around 1980. Father was Leonard Castellan, last known address, Omaha. Evelyn was quiet. This is personal. Yeah. Give me a few hours. Warren drove, thought about Leonard, the garage where they learned engines together. The fight in 1975 when Warren told Leonard he was going to Boeing and Leonard called him a traitor, said Warren thought he was too good for the family business. Both 23, young and stupid and too proud to apologize. 12 years wasted. Then Leonard died and Warren wasted another 30. His phone rang. Evelyn, founder Hannah Castellan, married 2001, became Hannah Brookfield, divorced 2008, currently lives in Omaha, works as mechanic at Westside Middle School, maintains facility vehicles. Warren pulled over, wrote down the address. Thank you. Warren, whatever this is, I hope it works out. Me too. The address was a small apartment complex on West Omaha. Older building, neat but weathered, where people lived who worked hard and didn't have much left over. Warren sat in his truck 20 minutes trying to figure out what to say. Hi, I'm your uncle. Your father wrote me in 1987, but I never got it until yesterday. I'm sorry I wasn't there when he died. Sorry I didn't know you existed. Sounded hollow even in his head. He got out, walked to the building, found 2C, knocked. Footsteps. Door opened. A woman stood there. Mid-40s, dark hair and ponytail, grease stain on work shirt. She had Leonard's eyes, their father's hands. She looked at Warren with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust strangers. Can I help you? Warren's throat was tight. Are you Hannah Brookfield? Who's asking? My name is Warren Castellan. I think I was your father's brother. Hannah's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Recognition, or maybe just careful neutrality of someone who'd heard that name before and it hadn't meant anything good. Uncle Warren, she said, flat, not hostile, not welcoming. Yeah, my father mentioned you once, said you left the family. Warren nodded. I did. So why are you here now? He's been dead 30 years. Warren pulled out the letter, held it up so she could see Leonard's handwriting. Because I never got this, and I think you should have it. Hannah stared at the letter, then at Warren. Back at the letter. What is it? A letter your father wrote me in 1987, asking me to be there for you if something happened to him. It never reached me. Ended up in a post office vault in Milbrook, Iowa. I found it yesterday. Hannah's hand came up slowly, took the letter, opened it, read it. Warren watched her face, watched her jaw tighten, eyes get wet. When she finished, she looked at the photograph. 7-year-old herself holding the wrench in her father's garage. I remember this, she said quietly. I remember him taking this picture. He said he was sending it to someone. I didn't know who. He was sending it to me. But you never got it. No. Hannah looked up. He died when I was 14. Heart attack. My mom couldn't handle things alone. We struggled. I grew up thinking I had no one. No family. No one who gave a damn. Warren felt the words like a physical blow. I'm sorry, he said. If I'd gotten the letter, I would have come. I would have been there. Would you? Anger in her voice now, because from what my dad said, you were too busy being important at Boeing to care about family. That's true, I was. I made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, you did. They stood in the doorway. Warren didn't know what else to say. He delivered the letter. That's all he'd come to do. He turned to leave. Wait, Hannah said. Warren stopped. How did you find this, the letter? If it was in a vault 37 years, how did you get it? Warren told her. Bus breaking down, post office, dollar, vault, Margaret Ellis, all of it. When he finished, Hannah stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. You bought a post office for $1. Yeah. And you've been delivering 37-year-old letters. Yeah. How many? About 200 so far, out of 300 total. Hannah shook her head slowly. That's insane. Maybe. Why would you do that? Warren thought about Margaret's letter, Dorothy Brennan, Eleanor Price, Robert Hammond, all the people who cried when they received messages decades late. Because someone needed to, he said. Hannah looked at the letter in her hand, then at Warren. You have kids. The question caught him off guard. A daughter, Clare, we don't talk. Why not? Same reason your father and I didn't talk. Pride, stupidity. Take your pick. When's the last time you spoke to her? 6 years ago, at her mother's funeral. Hannah nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she'd suspected. I have a cousin, she said, your daughter. I found her 3 years ago through a genealogy website. We meet for coffee sometimes. She talks about you. Warren's heart stopped. She does? Yeah, she says she's angry, that you were never there, that you cared more about being right than being her father. The words hurt, but Warren didn't argue. She's right, he said. She also says she misses you, that she wishes things were different. Warren's eyes burned. He blinked hard. You should call her, Hannah said. I did. Left a message. She didn't call back. Then call again. Keep calling. My father wrote you a letter trying to fix things. Took 37 years, but you got it. Don't wait 37 years to fix things with your daughter. Warren nodded, couldn't speak. Hannah looked at the letter again. I'm keeping this and the picture. Of course, and I'm going to think about whether I want to know you, whether I want an uncle who shows up 44 years late. That's fair. Hannah started to close the door, then stopped. The post office in Milbrook. Is it open? Can people visit? Yeah, 3 afternoons a week. Maybe I'll come see it. See where my father's letter waited all those years. I'd like that. Hannah nodded, then closed the door. Warren walked back to his truck, sat behind the wheel, put his face in his hands, and cried for the second time in 6 months. For Leonard, for Hannah, for Clare, for all the time wasted being proud when he should have been present. When he could breathe again, he pulled out his phone, looked at Claire's number, called, rang 4 times, voicemail. Claire, it's Dad. I know you didn't call back last time. That's okay. I just wanted to tell you something. I found a letter today from your Uncle Leonard. You never met him. He died before you were born, but he wrote me trying to fix things between us. The letter got lost. I didn't get it for 37 years. And I keep thinking, what if I'd gotten it when he sent it? What would be different? And I realize the answer is everything. Everything would be different if people just said the things they needed to say when they needed to say them. So I'm saying this now. I love you. I'm proud of you. I was wrong to push you away. I was wrong about everything. And I'm sorry. Call me. Or don't. But know that I'm here. I'm in Milbrook, Iowa, and I'm not going anywhere. He hung up, started the truck, started the long drive back. Halfway there, his phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Then he saw the Iowa area code. Realized it wasn't unknown. The message said, "This is Hannah. I talked to Claire. She wants to see you." "We both do. Can we come to Milbrook this weekend?" Warren pulled onto the shoulder, read the message 3 times to make sure it was real. Then he typed, "Yes, please come." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Okay, Saturday, 10 a.m." Warren sat on the shoulder and watched the sun set over the cornfields and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Warren and Mackenzie finished the last punch list items for county inspection, replaced a cracked window, fixed a loose vault hinge, painted the front steps. Grace noticed the change in him. "Something happened in Omaha," she said Thursday morning when Warren came in for coffee. "Yeah. Good something or bad something?" "Good, I think. Maybe." Grace smiled. "About time you had some good." "Yeah." Friday the county inspector came. Walked through with clipboard and measuring tape and an expression that gave away nothing. Warren and Mackenzie followed, watched him check foundation, test outlets, run water in sinks, open and close every door and window. After 2 hours, the inspector stood in the lobby and looked around. "This is good work," he said. "You brought this building back from the dead." Warren felt his chest tighten. "Does that mean we pass?" The inspector pulled out a form, signed it, handed it to Warren. "Certified to code. Building's yours for as long as you want it." Warren took the form with hands that weren't quite steady. "Thank you." After the inspector left, Mackenzie clapped Warren on the shoulder. "Told you we'd make it." "You did." "What's next?" Warren looked around the lobby, at the brass boxes, the pressed tin ceiling, the tile floor, the place where people had once come to send love to each other. "I'm going to keep delivering mail," he said, "and tomorrow my daughter's coming to visit." Mackenzie's eyes widened. "Your daughter?" "And my niece. Leonard's daughter." "Warren, that's good. That's really good." "Yeah, if I don't screw it up." "You won't. You've spent 6 months delivering other people's messages. Time you delivered your own." That night, Warren couldn't sleep. He got up at 3 and walked through the post office, stood in the lobby, went into the vault, looked at the remaining letters on the shelves. About 100 left. Out of 300, 200 delivered. 200 connections rebuilt. 200 messages that found their way home. He thought about Margaret Ellis, about her writing that letter on her last day and leaving the vault unlocked on purpose, trusting that someone would care enough to finish what she'd started. He thought about Leonard, about the letter that waited 37 years. He thought about Clare, about what he would say when he saw her. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. October in Iowa, the kind of day where light came at an angle and everything looked sharp-edged and precise. Warren was standing on the front steps at 9:30 when a car pulled up. Small sedan, 2 women inside. The driver got out first, Hannah. She looked different than in Omaha, less guarded, jeans and flannel shirt and work boots. The passenger door opened. Clare. Warren's breath caught. She looked like Diane. Same eyes, same way of standing with weight on one foot. But she looked like Warren too. Same jaw, same hands. She was 28 now. A woman. Not the 8-year-old holding the welding torch. Claire stood by the car for a long moment, looking at Warren. He looked back. Then Hannah said something Warren couldn't hear, and Claire started walking toward the post office. Warren met her halfway. They stood 3 feet apart, looking at each other. "Hi, Dad," Claire said. Her voice was quiet, careful. "Hi, sweetheart." Claire's eyes got wet. "Don't call me that. Not yet. I'm still angry at you." "Okay. But I'm here. I'm glad." Hannah walked up behind Claire, put a hand on her shoulder. "Show us the building," Hannah said. "Show us what you've been doing." Warren showed them everything. The lobby, the brass box, the pressed tin ceiling, the vault, the letters still waiting on the shelves. He showed them the apartment he'd built in the back, the desk where he did research, the database Grace created, the files of delivered letters and their stories. Claire listened without speaking, touched the brass boxes, ran her hand along the service counter. "This is beautiful," she said finally. "You did this yourself." "Me and a contractor named Dalton. But yeah, mostly." "You always said you didn't have time for this kind of work. That restoration was for people who didn't have real jobs." Warren nodded. "I said a lot of stupid things." Claire looked at him. "Yeah, you did." Hannah stepped forward. "Can I see the letter, the one my dad wrote?" Warren pulled it out. He'd been carrying it since Omaha. Hannah had said she wanted to keep it, but she'd let Warren hold on to it for now. Hannah read it again, showed it to Claire. Claire read it slowly, looked at the photograph of 7-year-old Hannah in the garage. "You look like me," Claire said. "In the picture, the way you're holding that wrench. I have a picture like that. Me and Dad in his garage when I was 8. "I know," Hannah said. "You showed me. Remember?" "Yeah." They stood together looking at the photograph. Two cousins, Warren's niece and Warren's daughter, connected by blood and by loss and by the fact that they'd both loved someone who'd been too proud to stay connected. Warren watched them and felt the weight of all his failures pressing down. "I'm sorry," he said. The words came out rough. "To both of you. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I let pride destroy everything that mattered." Claire looked at him. "Why now? Why are you sorry now and not 6 years ago?" Warren gestured at the lobby, at the vault, at the letters on the shelves. "Because I spent the last 6 months delivering messages from people who ran out of time, people who wanted to say they were sorry, or they loved someone, or they were proud, and the messages never got there. And those people died without ever knowing what the other person wanted to tell them." He took a breath. "Your mother asked me to fix things with you before she died. I promised I would. I lied, or I couldn't, or I was too scared. Take your pick. But I've delivered 200 letters to other people, and the whole time I kept thinking about the one letter I couldn't deliver. The one to you, the one that says I'm sorry, and I love you, and I was wrong about everything." Claire's face was wet now. "You hurt me. You told me I was throwing my life away." "I know. You said being a mechanic was for people who couldn't cut it in college." "I know. You said I was wasting my potential." "I know. And I was wrong. About all of it." Claire wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm good at what I do. I run the shop now, at Brookfield Automotive. I'm the head mechanic. People trust me with their cars, with their safety." "That's good. That's really good. Grandpa would have been proud." "He would have. And so am I." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "You mean that?" "Yeah, I should have said it 6 years ago. I'm saying it now." Hannah stepped back, gave them space. Claire walked closer to Warren, close enough that he could see the grease under her fingernails, close enough that he could see she had Diane's eyes, but they were red from crying. "I missed you," Claire said. "Even when I was angry, I missed you." "I missed you too. Mom talked about you at the end. She said you were broken, that you'd been broken since the war, that you didn't know how to fix yourself, so you fixed everything else instead." Warren nodded. She was right. "Are you still broken?" Warren looked around the post office, at the building he'd saved, at the letters he'd delivered, at his daughter standing in front of him after 6 years. "I'm getting better," he said. Claire stepped forward, put her arms around him. Warren held her, his daughter, who he'd pushed away because he'd been too proud to admit he was wrong, who'd come back anyway because she was stronger than he'd ever been. They stood there for a long time. Then Claire pulled back. "I can't forgive you yet," she said. "Not completely, but I'm willing to treat you. That's more than I deserve." "Yeah, it is." Hannah came over. "Can we see more letters, the ones you still have to deliver?" Warren showed them, pulled out envelopes at random, read addresses, explained which he tracked down and which were still mysteries. Claire picked up a letter, looked at the address. "This person, Patricia Reeves. You found her?" "Yeah, delivered that 2 months ago from her sister. They'd been estranged. Sister died before they could reconcile." "What did the letter say?" "That she was sorry, that she still loved her, that she wished they could start over." Claire set the letters down carefully. Did it help Patricia? Did it help to get the letter? She cried for an hour, said she'd always thought her sister hated her. The letter proved she was wrong. Claire was quiet. Then, I'm glad you're doing this. This matters. You think so? Yeah, Mom would have loved it. She was always trying to fix things between people. Between us. Between you and Uncle Leonard before he died. This is exactly what she would have done. Warren felt his throat tighten. I wish she could see it. Me too. They spent the rest of the morning in the post office. Warren showed them the database, the tracking system, the volunteers who came to help. Grace stopped by with lunch, sandwiches from the diner. She took one look at Warren and Claire and Hannah standing together and smiled. About time, Grace said, about damn time. In the afternoon, they walked Main Street. Warren showed them the town, the grain elevator, the church for sale sign, the boarded storefronts and the ones hanging on. It's dying, Claire said. Yeah, but slower than it would have been. Maybe people come now to see the post office. They eat at Grace's diner, stay at the bed and breakfast. It's not much, but it's something. Hannah stopped in front of the post office, looked up at it. This building was where my dad's letter waited, she said, for 37 years. And if you hadn't bought it, if you hadn't cared enough to open that vault, I never would have known he forgave you. I never would have known he wanted you in my life. Warren nodded. So I'm glad you bought it, Hannah continued. I'm glad you're here doing this. Even if you're 44 years too late to be my uncle, I'm glad you're trying now. Does that mean you'll give me a chance? Hannah looked at Claire. Claire nodded. Yeah, Hannah said. We'll both give you a chance. They left that evening, had to get back to Omaha. But Claire hugged Warren before she got in the car. Call me, she said. Once a week, I want to know how the letters are going. I will. And Dad, yeah, don't disappear again. I won't. He watched them drive away, stood on the steps until the car was out of sight. Mackenzie pulled up just as the sun was setting. They came, he said. Not a question. Yeah. How'd it go? Good, better than I deserved. Mackenzie nodded. You got another chance, don't waste it. I won't. Over the next 2 months, Warren delivered another 63 letters. The work got harder as the easy ones were done. The remaining letters were mysteries, wrong addresses, people who'd moved multiple times, names that didn't appear in any database. But Warren kept trying, and every Saturday he called Claire, told her about the letters, about people who'd cried, about connections rebuilt. She told him about the garage, about cars she was working on, about her life. Slowly, carefully. They rebuilt what had been broken. Hannah came to visit twice more, brought old photographs of Leonard, stories about growing up with a father who taught her to fix engines the same way Warren's father had taught him. They were family again. Not the way they should have been, but the way they could be now. In month 12, Warren opened the letter room to the public full-time. Not just 3 afternoons, every day. People came, not floods, but steady, curious people. People looking for letters. People who just wanted to see a place where someone had cared enough to save lost connections. The local paper ran another story, then a regional magazine. The attention brought more visitors, more people asking if there were letters for their families. Warren and the volunteers worked through the remaining stack, matching names, tracking addresses, making calls. By month 14, Warren had delivered 267 letters. 33 remained. Some would never be delivered. The people were too lost, addresses too vague, names too common. But Warren kept trying. In month 15, James Whitmore returned. Warren was in the lobby organizing files when Whitmore walked in. Mr. Castellan, I see you passed your inspection. I did. Impressive. I'll be honest, I didn't think you'd make it. I know. Whitmore looked around the lobby, at the brass boxes, the ceiling, the floor. I'll give you $120,000, he said in final offer. That's 120,000 times what you paid. Still not for sale. Why not? You've proven your point. You saved the building, delivered the letters. You can walk away now with good profit and clear conscience. Warren thought about Margaret Ellis, about her letter, about the line that had changed everything. Try to do right by the lost love. I'm not done yet, Warren said. You've delivered almost all the letters. There can't be more than a few dozen left. 33. 33 letters, and you're going to spend the rest of your life tracking them down. if that's what it takes. Whitmore shook his head. You're a fool, Castellan. This town is dying. This building doesn't change that. All you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. Maybe, but at least I'm doing something. Whitmore left. Warren watched him go and felt nothing. No anger, no fear, just quiet certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That night, Warren sat in his apartment and called Clare. How's it going? She asked. Good. Whitmore came by again. The developer, what did he want? To buy the building. I said no. Good. Don't sell it, Dad. What you're doing matters. You think so? I know so. They talked for an hour about nothing important, about everything important. When they hung up, Warren sat in the dark and thought about all the things that had brought him here. Bus breaking down, dollar, vault, Margaret's letter, Leonard's letter, all of it leading to this moment. A 67-year-old man sitting in an old post office in a dying town trying to deliver messages 38 years late. It was absurd. It was beautiful. It was exactly what he needed to be doing. The next morning, Warren drove to Omaha, picked up Clare and Hannah, brought them back to Milbrook for the weekend. They worked together in the letter room, going through the final 33 letters, researching, making calls. Clare found one, a letter to someone who'd moved to Florida. They called, the person answered, cried when Clare explained what they'd found. Hannah found another, an address in Illinois that matched a property record. They sent the letter, got a call 2 weeks later from someone who said thank you through tears. Working together, they delivered 7 more letters that weekend. 26 remained. On Sunday evening before Clare and Hannah left, Warren showed them something he'd been working on, a display case, glass-fronted. Inside were some of the letters he'd delivered, not the actual letters, copies, with permission from the recipients. Dorothy Brennan's insurance check, Eleanor Price's birthday card, Robert Hammond's letter from his father, stories, connections, proof that people had tried to reach each other across distance. This is beautiful, Clare said. It's for the letter room, so people can see what these letters meant. Hannah touched the glass. You should include Leonard's letter, the one he wrote to you. You sure? Yeah, it's part of the story. Warren added it that night. Leonard's letter, the photograph of Hannah at 7, a small placard explaining what had happened. The display case went up in the lobby the next week. People stood in front of it and cried. Over the next year, Warren delivered 16 more letters. 10 remained. Clare came to visit once a month. Sometimes Hannah came with her, sometimes just Clare. They were family again. Not perfect, still carrying scars, but family. Mackenzie finished his work on the building and moved on to other projects. But he stopped by once a week, checked on things, had coffee with Warren, talked about his daughter in Colorado. They talked now, not often, but enough. Grace kept running the diner, kept the volunteers organized, kept Warren fed and caffeinated, and reminded him to take days off occasionally. Evelyn at the county office helped track down the last 10 letters. Slow work, hard work, but they kept at it. 3 years after Warren bought the post office for $1, he delivered the 299th letter. One remained. A letter to someone named Alice Foster. Sent in 1985. No return address. The envelope had been opened. Inside was a birthday card. No personal message. Just printed text and a signature. Love, Mom. Warren had been searching for Alice Foster for 2 years. No luck. Then one morning his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Castellan, my name is David Foster. I heard about what you're doing. The post office, the letters. I'm wondering if you might have something for my grandmother. Alice Foster. She lived in Milbrook until she died in 1989. Warren's hands shook as he picked up the envelope. I do, he said. I have a birthday card. From her mother. Sent in 1985. Silence on the other end, then crying. My grandmother talked about that card, David said. She said her mother sent it, but it never came. She thought her mother forgot her birthday. She didn't forget. No, she didn't. Warren sent the card to David Foster. Got a call a week later. Thank you, David said. Thank you for giving her this, even if it's 39 years late. Thank you. Warren hung up the phone. 300 letters, all delivered. He sat in the vault where it had all started, where Margaret Ellis had left everything waiting for someone to care. He thought about Diane, about the promise he'd made in the hospital. He'd kept it. Not the way he'd planned, but he'd kept it. He'd fixed things with Claire. Not all the way, but enough. They talked, they visited, they were rebuilding. He'd found Hannah, Leonard's daughter, his niece, family he hadn't known existed. He'd delivered 300 messages that had been waiting to find their way home. Warren stood up, walked out to the lobby, looked at the brass post office boxes, the pressed tin ceiling, the tile floor. The building was his now, certified, paid for, safe. The town was still dying, but slower. People came to the letter room, ate at Grace's diner, spent money, left. It wasn't enough to save Milbrook, but it was something, and sometimes something was enough. Warren walked to his apartment, picked up his phone, called Claire. "Hey, Dad. Hey, sweetheart. How's it going?" "Good. I delivered the last letter today." "The last one, all 300. "Yeah. Dad, that's amazing. You did it." "We did it. You and Hannah and Grace and Evelyn and all the volunteers. We did it together." "What's next?" Warren looked around his small apartment, thought about the work that had saved him, the connections he'd rebuilt, the family he'd found. "I don't know," he said, "but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "Good, because Hannah and I are coming down next weekend. We want to celebrate." "I'd like that." They talked for a while longer, then hung up. Warren sat in the quiet of the post office and thought about Margaret Ellis, about her writing that letter on her last day, trusting that someone would care. He thought about Leonard, about the letter that had waited 37 years. He thought about all the love that had gotten lost on the way, and all the love that had finally found its way home. Warren Castellan was 69 years old. He'd spent 42 years building engines for airplanes, 3 years delivering letters in a dying town. The airplane engines had kept people safe. The letters had brought them home. Both mattered, but only one had saved him. Warren turned off the light, locked the door, walked through the lobby one more time. Tomorrow, Claire and Hannah would come. They'd celebrate. They'd be family. Tomorrow, the letter room would open. People would come. They'd look at the display case. They'd ask questions. They'd remember. Tomorrow, Warren would start going through the vault again, looking for anything he might have missed, any letter that might still need delivering, because the work was never really done. Love was always getting lost on the way, and someone needed to help it find its way home. Warren stood on the steps of the post office and looked at Main Street, Milbrook, at the grain elevator, at the boarded storefronts, at the lights of Grace's diner still burning. The town was dying, but not tonight. Tonight it was alive, and that was enough.